Okay, so now I have a question for you. How many people are in transition in the room or know somebody in transition? Okay, now if you didn't raise your hand, either you're on the shy side or you're in denial because we all go through transition in major ways all throughout our adult years, and even in our childhoods, and when we move, and when we change schools, and when we graduate. So there's lots of transitions that you're going through and have gone through, and hopefully tonight will give you a sense and a framework for how this whole thing works. I have a little tale here because they're recording this, but this is not the microphone that's going to come over any kind of speakers here. So if I trip, just okay. I'm kind of clumsy, so it'll work out fine. I don't know if you know the book 60 True Things by Gordon Livingston, but he said happiness requires an ability to tolerate uncertainty. And that's the only way that we can be happy, is that if we're comfortable and know how to embrace uncertainty and change in our lives. Now, this is not good news, is it? I'm seeing some faces going, oh, do I have to? Yeah, we all have to. It's really not a pleasant thing all the time, but it always is a growth-filled thing. So today and this evening's takeaways, here are the things that I was planning. But I really want this to be interactive because I don't want to talk at you for the next hour and a half. That is not going to be fun for you or for me. So ask questions, share experiences. If something's not settling well with you, say something and we'll address it all. So what I'd like you to know a little bit more about is the 21st century world of work. It's different. It's different from what it was in the past. And nobody has really caught up, and the rules and how we go about job hunting, they haven't caught up with the 21st century world. So I want to really frame that for you. I want to introduce you to a new practical framework, model for understanding change and transition. That's what the book is based on. That's the work that we do at Centerpoint. And people have found it extremely useful in thinking about things differently, because we're told that life is sort of this ladder you have to climb, and it really isn't. So we're going to shift that for you. I also want you to realize that you always have choices in life, and those choices are in your hands. And it isn't somebody else controlling your life, but you are controlling the choices that you make, and how important that really is in this process. And hopefully I'd like to inspire you to feel that it's really possible to find and follow your passion in life and your purpose in life, because that's what it's all about. I love the name of your career center. It's not, the career center. It's the Center for Career and Calling. It's wonderful because we all have calling. And as we develop in our lives, there are things that come naturally to us that, as kids even, you can do career counseling with little ones. They say by age 7, basically our story, our skills on how to cope in this world have been developed. So actually by 3, you plunked into this life, into a family, into a community. You didn't have any choice about that. You just ended up there, right? And so what we do as babies is we look around and figure out, how do I make sense of all this stuff? Because of the environment that you're in and because of what you're experiencing, you try to develop skills and strengths in yourself that allow you to cope and deal with the surroundings that you've been plunked down into. By age 7, they pretty much say, developmentally, we've accumulated a lot of our coping strategies around that. Not that that's the end-all, be-all of life, is age 7. But by then, we really have established what we're good at. What we, and even in the challenging things that we've experienced as we were growing up as little kids, those are the things that have honed our talents, have honed our skills and our ability to get things done in the world. So we're going to talk more about that. But I really hope that you believe that you can find your purpose and you can make it real in the world. So how many are in the room are graduating seniors? Great. And how many have already graduated? And any juniors or younger? Ooh, yay! Good for you. And others. Others. We got others. Good. Good. Well, as I said, I want this to be interactive, so please, please ask questions. I've been a career counselor now going on 33 years. 33? Yeah, I am old. And it's changed over the course of those 33 years. I mean, it's not the same as it was back then. And we need to each continue to develop ourselves over time. One thing I want to start with is the whole idea that this world is a different world than it was in the 20th century. And there's a thing, have anybody seen this thing on YouTube called Did You Know? Yeah? No? Yeah, okay, well, I've edited it just a bit, this is about 5 minutes. So I want to play this for you because it gives you just a sense of how many changes have happened and what the world really looks like now. Shift happens. So what do you think? Wow, wow what? What did you, there were a lot of reactions to a lot of that information. What were you most surprised by?
Depressing, actually.
Depressing?
The number of high IQs and like China and India, like more than people. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about all the information that like people go to like YouTube for. That seems like it's taking over from like say Google for like searching up information.
Yeah.
Both are really useful. So you just type in like the search bar question.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is because usually you can type in the most obscure question. There'll probably be like a bunch of like Yahoo answers or something.
That's right.
Some forums like that.
Yep.
So that's like
In nanoseconds. Like,
that's like an instant
yeah.
information.
Yeah. Yeah. When I watch this, I also think to myself, so what are the opportunities that will exist in the world because of all these changes? And if you go into onto YouTube, this will be there. It's called Did You Know 2013. It's probably going to be updated again this year. They update it every year, and there's more of it than I just showed you. But you know, think about what do you love, and what did you learn that makes you think, oh, maybe I'm the right solution to this problem that's happening, you know, or this need that's out there in the world. Other things that you're struck by. It's late, huh? It's after dinner. It's warm in here. Okay, well, keep thinking, because we're going to talk a little bit more about the 21st century world, because it has really shifted, and we've got to change our mindset, because all of the job hunting rules that we know, they're last century's rules. They're not this century's rules. We've got to rethink the way that we connect with people. And so, because change is occurring at warp speed, did you know that 1/3 of the U.S. workforce, 1/3 of the U.S. workforce are considered freelancers? Okay, now they call them freelancers: temporary, contingent, casual, contract, part-time, external, atypical, adjunct, consultant, and self-employed. 1/3 of the U.S. workforce. Okay, so that's not going to decrease any. Because when you've got, you meet somebody who works at Microsoft, right? And you talk to them a little bit about, you know, what they do there. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be an independent contractor, not an employee. It used to be that, you know, core jobs with benefits used to be 70% of the workforce 10 years ago. Now, it's 40%. In 10 years, it's decreased a whole 30%. That's a lot. So these companies, what do they see? They enjoy having contractors and independent workers because they don't have to pay benefits, and it saves them money and it increases their bottom line, right? So why are they going to go back to paying benefits? not going to happen. Now, I'm not saying there aren't jobs out there with benefits. There are. There's 30% of the workforce, or 40% of the workforce. But you got to be thinking, well, maybe something's changing, and I've got to look at things differently. And so instead of staying with one job for a long time, did you see those statistics? 1 out of 4 workers are with their employer less than 1 year. Wow. You're going to have 10 to 14 jobs on average before age 38. That's different than it has been in the past. And this idea that I'm going to get into a job and it's going to last for a number of years and I'm going to work my way up the ladder in that job, you really have to rethink that one. I was talking to a few people. So Candace, you were telling me outside, you were already into your second job, right? A couple of years out from, not even a couple of years out from graduation. Yeah. And Holly, wherever you are, you too. And you're combining up different things. They talk about portfolio careers these days. My work is now a portfolio career. I just realized it the other day, actually, just a few weeks ago. I'm like, hey, I got a portfolio career because I'm not the executive director at Centerpoint anymore, right? I let go of that last year. And so I'm writing and I'm speaking and I still train people at Centerpoint and I still see people individually and do some workshops there. And then, you know, I travel a lot. I've been actually speaking all over the world these days. And it's really exciting. And my schedule is very, very different. Oh, and I'm a radio host. I got a radio show. Who would think, right? But you put all these things together and it adds up to be a life that really works for me right now. It's in this stage of my life. It's been fun. And I have a husband who's just sort of semi-retired, and so he's got some time, and because my work and time is more flexible, we get to spend more time together. It's working, but we need to be consciously making choices over the course of our lives and our work. How does work fit into your life? Instead of you fitting into work, it's really about how does work fit into what you want. So we have to shift that. Inventing a job, making a job. There's a book called The Startup of You by, I guess his name, it's let's see, LinkedIn's co-founder, Reid Hoffman, with Ben Kinoshka. You've got to constantly be reassessing opportunities and looking at where's the need. So it shifts from what's out there and what jobs can I match myself up with to who am I and what do I want to make a difference with? And then where's the needs out there? And you take that information about yourself and you evaluate all the opportunities that exist. So it's not just looking up on monster.com and saying, oh, that job looks interesting. It's saying, what do I really, really love? What am I really good at? What do I want to make a difference with? How would I describe that really specifically? And who might need this? And then go out and look at, you can look at monster.com, but now you're evaluating much better, much more effectively than you would have before. So what changes have happened? One is changes in production. I mean, it's a global economy now. It's not just the US. It's such a small universe. And we really have to understand that if it costs less to manufacture something in China and then ship it halfway across the world than making it in the next neighborhood over, you know, that's a whole different way of looking at things than existed before. A lot of the work, too, is the rise of knowledge work. So services, knowledge that you have to be able to share with others. So consulting. What we do is knowledge work. Share information that way. And as I mentioned, there's all different kinds of employment arrangements these days, and they're increasing. So this guy sitting in a coffee shop doing his work, well, yeah, you know, part of the YouTube video was JetBlue stopped having a call center in 2004 and allowed people to work from home, wherever their home was, to do that work. So no more call center, no more centralized kind of places. And it requires all of us to have what they call, in the career development field, protein careers. And just quickly, I want to go through that just to give you a sense. The guy who came up with this idea, he started in 1976. Nobody was listening to him back then, because that was way before this whole thing was shifting and changing. But in a traditional organizational career, who's in charge? Well, obviously the organization is, but in a protein career, you're in charge. The person is. Core values, it's all about advancement in a traditional career. And in a protein career, it's about freedom and growth. Degree of mobility is very low in an organizational career, and it's very high in a protein career. Success criteria, well, it's all about position level, salary, do you have a window, right? And protein career, it's all about psychological success. Is this meeting my needs? Am I feeling like I'm contributing? Key attitudes, it's all about committing to the organization, making that work, putting them first. And here it's about, in protein careers, it's about work satisfaction and my own commitment to my life and what I want to do with it. In Dr. Mark Savickas, you didn't go to NCDA. Did you guys go to NCDA in 2 years ago, but not this year, this past year. Mark Savickas, Dr. Mark Savickas, he's in Ohio. You can see his whole closing keynote talk on ncda.org. And actually, there's a lot of great resources on ncda.org for job hunters. You might want to check that one out. And Mark, he said a whole bunch of really good things, but he quoted this one French critic and poet, Paul Valéry, I guess. I don't know how you say his last name. I don't speak French. But Paul Valéry was talking about the turn of the 20th century. So from the 1910 or so. And here's what he said around 1910. The trouble with our times is that the future is not what it used to be. And we can say the same thing 100 years later, which I find amazing, just amazing. And Mark also said, in the past, one's job or career fixed one's identity virtually for life. So our identity came from work, from that occupation that we put on ourselves. But in contemporary life, it's full of ambiguity and tension because it's fragmented, tentative, experimental, discontinuous, and ever-changing. Things are changing so fast that people are losing a sense of who they are and where they're going. And in this uncertain world, the only certainty is what you make inside yourself and with those you love. So creating the life that you love, I mean, the radio show that I do is called Design a Life You Love. You're in charge of defining what you want and what that might look like. Okay, so we need a different perspective on how to think about this century and the experiences that we're having and all the chaos that's occurring. So in the past, it's been a very linear approach, right? Climb the ladder. Everything you do should build upon what you've done before. You are building more, going forward. You're trying to arrive at some place and live happily ever after, right? That sense of, if I just get there, then everything's going to be okay. Everything's controllable, that it's success or failure. We're either on track or we're not on track. And there's a formula that keeps us on track. And the formula are things like work hard, be persistent, think positively. You know, somebody was in one of our workshops said, yeah, if it's to be, it's up to me, right? Those things that keep you on that straight and narrow path. But what happens when it doesn't feel like your life is moving up in this direction? It feels like it's, in decline. Things are in chaos. They're falling apart. They don't make sense. They, don't look like everybody else's supposedly life looks like going in this direction. Well, usually we don't question the formula. We turn it in on ourselves and say, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get back on the stick? If I just work harder, or I'm more persistent, maybe my life will go back to being in this, working in this direction. And instead of tying into a linear approach like that, which is very limited and only part of the equation, we need to think of things cyclically, where there are times for stepping out there, being out there, making things happen in the world, and then times for stepping back. This is a whole new way of looking at life, whole shift, because it's about renewal and growth over the whole course of life. Like, you know, when we used to live till like 40, then maybe, yeah, there was a ladder. But we're living at least twice as long as that now. So we have many, many lifetimes to experience in the course of the years that we have here. So the cyclical allows for the internal, who am I, where am I going, what am I learning here, and the external of what's out there. It's focusing on the journey, not just the destination, as the linear does. And this is not a new idea. It's actually ancient. You look at cultures. Those who live close to nature, they understand the cycles of life and apply that understanding to their own rites of passage. So Native American cultures with the medicine wheel, where you move and walk through the 4 directions on a path towards wholeness. Or the Eastern cultures with yin-yang, you know, you've got a little bit of both in each side. You need that cyclical approach. There are so many cyclical symbols in the course of you know, history that people have understood. Oh, yeah, you know, sometimes we've got to compost things. I think the environmentalists are really helping us to think that we've got to recycle our lives too, not just our garbage. When we think about the cyclical approach, though, and we think about psychology and human development, it's a relatively new idea. In the 60s, a guy named Daniel Levinson did a longitudinal study, and he found that there were 2 periods of time that were a pattern over the course of the adult years. And he talked about one as being a life structure, where predominantly we have our fit in the world and we know who we are. So we go to a party and we have that identity, right? And that alternates with times he called a life transition. Not really clear where I'm going. A lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of chaos going on. And what was really interesting is that he found that there was this normal alternating pattern between the 2. That it wasn't just the midlife crisis, or happen once in our lives, but and get this, he found every 5 to 10 years on average, right? Okay, 7-year itch, we know this one, that it was normal pattern for us to go through asking ourselves, where am I going? What's important to me? How does this fit in with what I want? I mean, you look at actors and singers, and how they reinvent themselves. They can't do the same thing for the whole of their lives. They have to reinvent. They have to find new ways, new expressions of who they are. Or else it gets stale, it gets old, and you're just sort of hanging on to something that's not working anymore. So this whole idea of a cyclical approach just shows that we, on one side of the cycle, we're moving from transition, which is the bottom life transition, towards structure. So this is on this side of the cycle, we have a vision, we know where we're going, we have energy to go make it happen, we have that goal, we have that dream that we're going after, and the activity is all focused outwardly, versus the other side where we don't have a clear sense of vision, although you might be that kind of person that has lots of ideas. Oh, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this. But you don't have any energy, so you can't go make any of those ideas happen. Because the activity is focused inwardly. We have to step in to really do some introspection about who am I, where am I going, what do I want with my life. And we need both of these. We can't just have the outer, the linear. We try, but I tell you, Centerpoint's been around for over 20 years, and we have seen a lot of people come back around because they are out there going, yeah, I don't think I want this anymore. And I have to step back again to really look at how does this fit? Not just work. Sometimes people come into Centerpoint and they think, oh, I just got to fix the work piece and everything will be okay. And they realize there are other things going on in their lives, like maybe it's some personal growth issues, something about themselves that they don't like, that they need to change. that's the shift that needs to happen. Or sometimes in a family or relationship, maybe those are the things that are shifting, that they really have to take a look at and step back into. So we need both, and we do this in our lives every day. It's part of our physiology. Activity and rest. Just saw an article in the New York Times on Sunday about why we sleep and why our brains need to actually clean out all of that stuff that's accumulating in there, and that's why we sleep. I mean, there's a evolutionary reason for it. It was a fascinating article, but we have to sleep. We can't stay awake 24 hours a day. So there's activity and rest. Breathing, we breathe in, we breathe out. If you only do one of those, we got to call the EMTs. Not a good thing, right? We got to do both. And any decision that we make, we step in. We, consider, what do I need here? Even if it's just a simple thing like going to the refrigerator and deciding what I want to eat tonight. We got to check in. I'm doing it healthily. I'm checking in with myself and going, well, what do I feel like eating before I get to the refrigerator, right? So anytime we make a decision, we go through these kinds of cycles. And for the cycle that's in the book and the cycle that we teach at Centerpoint, we use all of those pieces to describe this map for how we go through transition in our lives. And it applies to every aspect of life, not just work. But work is a big piece. And we use a seasonal metaphor to explain the different phases of this. Now, I have a little exercise here that I want you to work on. It's a mini assessment. It's about, oh, thank you. It's about how ready are you to make a change? If you have a phone or something and you wanted to get online to do it, we haven't quite moved it over to our new website yet. So it's on our old website. It's called oldcpinst.org/self-test. You can go and do it, and it's a self-scoring process versus adding up the numbers. The math takes a little bit more time. So if you need a piece of paper, go for it. But it just asked you 5 questions, and what I want you to do is pick one thing that's in transition. So it could be your career and your work that's in transition. It could be something else that you feel like it's in transition, like maybe you're thinking about moving or something like that. So pick one thing. You can only pick one thing. Don't generalize your whole life around these 5 questions. Do you all did you need them? Oh, we need some more over here. Do we have any more? It's 2 more. Anybody who's not using one that they could pass over? Anybody who's, anybody? Yeah, just a few more. Thank you. Sorry, we didn't expect this many people. Anybody using their phone that they could pass along their paper? Here. We need another one over here. She's got, Karen has another one here.
Oh, here's 2 more.
Oh, and here's 2 more. Great. I think it's gonna work. Any more? Somebody else need something? We have more. Who needs? You're okay? Okay. So again, there's just 5 questions around one aspect of life. So pick one thing. You want to, first side says life, career, self-test. Pick one thing that's in transition right now and answer these 5 questions. And then if you've got the piece of paper, add up the numbers. If you don't have the piece of paper and you're online, you just hit the button and it'll tell you where you are. Okay, so what I want to do now is hand out got another handout here for, this is a simplified version of the cycle that we're going to go through. Oh, thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. And it focuses mostly on the career. So the first one that we're going to go through is summer, which starts at a commitment point where we say, yes, this is the form that this vision needs to take. And we also, on this mini cycle, the career process cycle, call it career management. real. Makes a lot of noise. And career management, so anybody here have 111 points or more? You did. Okay, so is that thing really in major transition in your life?
I'm a senior, so
You're a senior. Great.
figure out job stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in summer, it's that sense where you're moving from challenge to mastery in some part of your life. So you have a real clear sense of direction, you know where you're going, you're building it, launching it. So what's your name?
Jubilee.
Jubilee. Do you have a clear sense of direction? And sort of. Okay, will you be willing to share that with us?
I have like several different kind of things that are out there that I sort of want to do, goals in mind, but I don't really know how to get to any one of them necessarily. Well, I can pick one really and kind of start in that direction, and then you know, if I don't like it, move in another direction.
So, and they feel like they're exciting for you. You're passionate about them. Yay. Yeah, that's what really makes summer, or career management, because you're excited, you're committing to a certain direction to move in, and you are, building those skills. In the beginning stages, you really are investing in where you're going. So you don't know a lot about, sorry, that's squeaking. You don't know a lot about how to get there. Like, remember when you first started school? And you had to figure out where the buildings were, and how to get from one classroom to the next. And it was really confusing. Well, now it's like second nature, right? Well, in the beginning stages of any dream, it takes a lot of energy and attention and focus because you don't know how to get there. And so looking at your life from the outside in, a lot of people might say, oh, your life is so out of balance. You're spending all your time at that new job or in that internship or with that person that you're dating or whatever, right? And you're just immersing yourself. But for you, it feels really good. It feels exciting. It feels like, oh, this is the investment I'm making in my life, and I need to build and launch and grow this thing. So yeah, I don't have time for you because I'm really focused over here. And as we move through challenge to mastery, up at the top of the cycle, we call it a positive plateau, where you do arrive at some level of what you set out to do. It's not that it's stagnant or it ends or there's no growth involved, but up there it feels really solid, like something you can count on. You know how it is when you're in a relationship with somebody and you just feel like, oh yeah, that's just solid, I don't have to worry about it, I feel good about that. It's sort of a resting place in the cycle. And what happens is we need to find ways to just continuing to grow and learn even when we are still excited about the vision of where we are going. And sometimes there are people who tend not to be so good at that, and those are the creative folks. They tend to be, okay, oh, I see a grimace. Oh, I think that's me. So you end up, building towards something, and it was exciting to get there, and now that you're there, it's like, okay, been there, done that, what's next? And you try to get back to the beginning stages of this summer, of this career management, because it's, that's the exciting part. That's the learning part, that's the growing part. If you do that too many times, you burn out because you get tired. Because in a way, the plateau is a way to rest, to reap the benefits. Thinking about this seasonal metaphor, a garden is in full bloom, right? And you're reaping the fruits of all that you've built. So you need that time to be able to acknowledge all the work that you've done, make it a little easier. You know how in a job, after a while, it gets a little easier. Like, it gets easier to find those classrooms. You don't have to think about it so much. And isn't that nice? Well, now the new thing that you're going to start in, you're going to have to learn all those rules all over again on how to get things done and how to make things happen. And it's going to take a lot of energy. And if you're not replenishing that energy, you're going to get depleted. So finding enough creativity and variety in the vision that you're going towards is really important. At some point, we have to ask, is the vision still alive? Like in the beginning stages of our careers like you're in, sometimes we don't know a whole lot about the world of work, and we know some things about ourselves, but we don't know the real variety of things. But we make the best decisions we can, and then we go, this is too small. I need something different. This isn't what I thought. And so it catapults us into the fall. And in the fall, this is where we have to let go of what was and the identity. See, we were building that identity in summer. And in fall, this is reevaluating it and saying, is this still what I want? And one of three things can happen there. One is, as I mentioned, you outgrow it. It's too small. It's just not enough. You need to do something more with your life. Or you get there, and then you find out, ooh, that's not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be real different from that. And it's, I don't know if you know about Joseph Campbell, the Follow Your Bliss guy. He's the one, he's a mythologist, and he, no longer around, but he was being interviewed by Bill Moyers, and he said, yeah, sometimes you get to the top of the ladder, but find that it's against the wrong building. So, not what I thought it was going to be. Or you get there, and then the rug gets pulled out from under you, you get laid off. Right, Holly? You have no sense that that's going to happen. You're hoping that you'd be there, but you have no control over that. So sometimes it gets taken away from you, and we end up in fall. And fall is 30 or fewer points. Anybody have 30 or fewer points? Great. Yeah, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's allowing yourself to realize, oh, I'm still in the structure of what I was building, but it's not working anymore. I gotta rethink this thing. And as we go through fall, and as we go through this reevaluation stage, what's happening is that we're going through a grieving process, really, because we had a vision, but now we have to let go of that vision. It's not working anymore. And so in big and little ways, depending on how much of our identity is caught up in that cycle that we've been in that vision that we've created, then we find ourselves, first stage, denial of the grieving process, right? Oh, it's not so bad. At least if you're in a job, or you're realizing that at least I have something. It's not paying very well, but at least it's something, right? We do the rationalization thing to ourselves to just sort of distance from really asking the harder questions, because we really don't want things to change. I mean, innately, I think we're all hardwired to want stability. And when these things are shifting, it can be really difficult, and it can be really challenging. So denial's the first stage. Anger is the next stage. And we always can tell when people are in an angry stage. They are feeling victimized, trapped, feeling like they're out of control because in everybody else's hands. And so they do a lot of complaining. They complain. We've all had friends, right? Yeah, you've had friends or family members who've been in this kind of situation, and you've been listening to the complaining so long that you call them up and you go, oh, I thought I'd get your voicemail, because you're so tired of hearing the complaining because it just won't stop. We have to teach our front office people how to deal with folks in this phase of the process, because it's really, it's just like you just sort of spew at you. It's toxic in a lot of ways, but it's a really good sign, because you know what? They're not in denial anymore. Things are moving. And so at least we know that they're not getting stuck in this process. Next phase of the grieving process is bargaining. And this is the if only stage. If only, if only I won the lottery, I'd be able to do really whatever I wanted to do, right? And or if only my boss was different, if only the situation was different, if only I looked on Monster.com and that perfect job would just like jump off the screen at me, everything would be okay. We're trying to bargain our way through this. And if we don't have a really clear sense of the vision, the direction that we want to go in, the thing that we want to make a difference with in our lives, then It's, you know, there's no foundation to it. Although what we've seen a lot of times is people trying to jump across the circle, like pick something. At least it'll get me out of here, or at least it'll be something to get me started. And sometimes that can be really good. It's like, okay, yeah, let me test this out and see how this is going to work for me. And you know, after a little while, you realize, no, that's not it either. And so we, in Passion Search, which I have a person who's in my Passion Search class right now in here. Do you want to say anything about this? Kelsey? Okay.
I really like what the cycle is, and it definitely makes sense to me. And doing the Passion Search really helped me get through the hard part of the cycle. So
Yeah.
I'll try to do more.
Okay, good. In that process, you know, we have people do lifelines where they just do a graphical representation of where they've been and the journey so far in their life. And there are ups and downs, there are peaks and valleys. And this trying to jump across the circle without going into that winter, really the introspective stuff, looks like this on a lifeline. Oh, tried that, nope. Tried that, nope. Tried that, nope. Tried that, nope. Not real high, not real low, but it's just not. Yep.
Oh,
Question?
yeah.
Yeah.
In our office, a lot of students that thought they were going to go for a certain career, and now that it's not right, so they're changing majors.
Yes.
Or for people that are seniors, I always thought this, but now it's not good. So that would do.
That would fit. That's a perfect example of fall. Yep. And having to get to that place where I'm letting go of the old vision, the old dream, and the old direction that's not working anymore. And it's hard to let go and say, no, this is an ending that I've got to go through, and I want to step back a little bit. So sometimes if someone is just picking something out of the air, oh, maybe this will be a good next major, without really doing the work of who am I and where am I going, then it could be one of those just trying to you know, test the waters, but not in a productive kind of way, a wasting time kind of way, and an avoidance kind of way sometimes. Other times it is testing. I mean, it's not good or bad. We just have to make these conscious choices about where am I and what is this about. Those people who had 30 or fewer points, anything you'd like to add? What would you like to add to this experience? What's fall like for you? Anybody would you like to share something? It's not pleasant. Why isn't it pleasant? What makes it not pleasant? Yeah.
Oh, maybe I should just be more grateful for what I have. Exactly what you said. Yeah, maybe, you know, I don't get paid much, but I do have, you know, these great things. And trying to focus on the positives, it's really just an attempt to not really focus on the fact that it's not working out.
Yeah.
You want to let go of, you know, your old vision.
Yeah.
Now, vision was great, but
It's just,
hard to let go.
yep, that's right. That's a perfect description of it. And that's a normal, natural unfolding. You know, it's just saying, you know, you need something more. It's just not enough for you anymore. You need something else, something bigger, something more tied to your purpose. Yeah. Right. That's right. And sometimes there can be a technique in, we call it sort of a mini transition in fall, which is a holding structure, where we decide to stay where we are for a little bit of time, consciously choose it, knowing that you're going to end it. Like, I'm going to be out of here in 6 months, or I'm, you know, put a date on it, whatever. And but it gives you an opportunity to emotionally detach from the feeling of it really draining you. Because if you're drained the whole time, you can't do the work of winter of renewal and self-assessment to really ask those questions, because you're so tired and you're so torn by all the things that are going on. So how do you create short-term solutions that you're not going to get stuck in if you're making a conscious choice. So a holding structure is very different from a holding pattern. You know, I think a holding pattern is very unconscious. We're just sort of putting up with, and we're not really asking ourselves anything. But a holding structure and really talking about it that way can be really helpful for folks. There are a couple of quotes that I have here. One, Alan Cohen is the speaker, and he says, it takes a lot of courage to release the familiar and seemingly secure, to embrace the new, but there's no real security in what is no longer meaningful. There's more security in the adventurous and exciting, for in movement there is life, and in change there is power. And we forget that. We forget that sometimes we have to be uncomfortable in order to find the next big dream. And we have to step back. So I mean, I hope you get that message tonight, that it's okay to step back. Alan Cohen also said, which I think is a very interesting contrast to this, when I let go of something, I leave claw marks. Right? So we have to know our own style of letting go and do it in a more conscious way. You know, and making those decisions to say, okay, it's time to leave. You know, I'm one of those people who can make things work when they shouldn't be working, because I throw ideas at them, and I'm creative like that. And I've had to ask the people who I work with to tell me when I'm doing that, because I don't know. I mean, I don't know when something is in fall, and I'm just trying to make it work, and I should be finding ways of letting it go. Like I remember this time when our phone system was in fall, and I was in denial, right? Our phone system was not working, and there was like, but I was throwing out, well, we could do this, we could try this, we could try that, and no, that doesn't work. At some point, we gotta let go. And then there are some people who are more risk takers, who are more comfortable jumping to something new than to stay with the old. So we need to step into winter. We need to step into what we call renewal and self-assessment. And this is the 31 to 60 points. How many people were in this phase? Good. Yeah, this is so who am I? Where am I going? What do I want, right? Does this make sense? Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Yeah, and this is a really important time. You know, we talked before about the happily ever after stories, right? We grew up with those fairy tales, and they lived happily ever after. Well, did you ever see the Stephen Sondheim show Into the Woods? How many people have seen that? Okay, you got a few people here. It's a great little show, and what happens the whole first half of the show, it's a Broadway show, and it's a musical. It's really creative, and all the vignettes of the fairy tales that we grew up with, and they lived happily ever after, right? In all these fairy tales. But then after intermission, he finishes the real stories, because that's only one part of the story, and we know in life that it isn't about living happily ever after. In winter, we also have other stories, and that's the hero or the heroine's journey. You know, where the hero or the heroine leaves the known, walks into the unknown, the wilderness, often to go fight dragons and come out transformed. And we're going into our own wilderness. You know, it's not the external though, it's the internal. It's the who am I questions. You know, these are the Harry Potter stories. This is the Lord of the Rings. This is, you know, these are stories we know, and we connect with around bigger issues, around how am I going to really make a difference in the world, and who am I? So the renewal is sometimes if we've been doing something that's really been draining us, we have to just refill the well and give ourselves time and attention on that. In winter, the first phase, it's a continuation of the, you know, and grieving doesn't happen one step after the other, you know that, so there's always a lot of cycles within cycles there. But depression is the next stage, and that's the lack of energy to really be able to focus on anything. And it's, you know, what we have energy for is taking a nap sometimes. The hardest thing to do when you're in this phase, there's sort of two phases of winter, and the first phase is the continuation of the letting go process. And the hardest thing to do when you're there is to go to any kind of reunion. You know, we're first thing out of people's mouths, or your family gathering. So what are you doing now? You know, and you're like, don't ask. Well, we always joke at Centerpoint, we're going to make our first fortune selling T-shirts to people in transition that say, don't ask. I'm not telling. Because it's like, you don't really want to go out there because you don't know who you are. You don't know where you're going. And it's really hard when people expect you to know. And you can't know at this point. Right here, you've got the right questions, but you don't have the answers yet. And in the second phase of winter, that's when we do the self-assessment. So who are you? Really? Who are you? What do you love? What comes so naturally to you that you don't even see it sometimes? And what's unique to you? You know, in career counseling, a lot of the 20th century was around self-assessment tests, you know, and how are you similar to other people, and what did those people choose in terms of occupations, and so maybe these are occupations you'd be interested in. The 21st century, it's not how are you similar, it's how are you different. How are you unique? How, because of your upbringing and your experiences growing up and your story, what makes you special? And that expression, you know, who needs it out there in the world? But we have to define it clearly and concisely and specifically. So often, one thing I really have a pet peeve around this with career books, where they have all those skills lists. You know, you're supposed to mark off what skills you're good at. Like, okay, that's a good starting place, but that's really macro. I don't, you know, what does it tell me if you say, I like to teach, or I like to write, or I like to organize, or I'm good with, how about this one? I want to work with people. What does that tell me? It doesn't tell me much. It just has this big box, right? So your job in this stepping back process is to be able to clearly and specifically say, this is what I love about teaching. This is my way of writing. This is my way of organizing. This is my way of putting things together that's unique. And you've got to describe it really, really clearly before you can go out there. And this, so thinking about, and where we get stuck is what happens to all of us, because we're problem solvers, right? So an idea will come up to the surface and you go, you know, yeah, I'm good at that. I like that. And then our heads kick in and our heads go, oh, but I can't make a living at that. So we toss that one out, right? And so then another thing comes up to the surface and we go, oh boy, I would love to have that in my work somehow. And then our heads kick in and we go, oh, but I don't have the right credentials for that. And we toss that, you know, and all these things just sort of get tossed away. And what do we end up with? Something is a watered down compromise that we're not going to go do because we're not excited about it, right? So we have to divide this process into two steps, two distinct steps. And the first step is, who are you? What do you love? What do you want to make an impact on? What are those things that make you you? Let's define them all. That's what we do in Passion Search. It's all the clue gathering, because you are you, and you can't hide it. When you know we're just asking you questions, and you're coming into class every week, and it's just like, okay, right? It's like you're there, and we all see it, and it's surprising to you because you don't think that anybody can see who you really are, but we can when you put it out there. And so you gather all those clues, then you sift through all those clues, and then you describe, this is me. Not in terms of a job title, not in terms of an organization, but in terms of a description of what you know, of who you are and what you want to make a difference with. Then you're ready to take that out into the world and go into spring. I'm going the wrong way. Go into spring to explore how. So 2 distinct steps. Who am I? And then, okay, if I describe it, so, you know, they talk about your elevator speech. They talk about your, we call it vision statement at Centerpoint. You can call it mission statement, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter what you call it, but that description of when somebody says to you, so what are you looking for? You can say, you know, I don't know what it's called. I'm not sure where it's going to be, but here's what I want to make a difference with, and here's what I'm excited about. And that's what you come out of winter with. And isn't that exciting? So then in spring, that's an opportunity to bridge your vision, and spring is also exploration and marketing, your vision to what the needs are out there. This is a time of experimenting, trying things on, testing things out, finding out who has the problem that you'd be the best solution for, right? So you're 61 to 110. How many people were in that category? Great. Yeah, this is when you do the job search. You can't do the job search when you're in fall or winter, because you're going to just set yourself up for rejection. Don't even start it. In spring, when you're in spring, now you're ready. And we always know when a vision statement or an elevator speech or whatever you want to call it is on target. Two things happen. One is, as somebody's listening to you, when you're talking to them about who you are, they get your energy. They get curious. They're engaged. They go, oh, tell me more about that. Oh, that sounds interesting. And it doesn't have to be a long description. It can just even be a little tagline that you tease them with, and then you go into more of the description of it. And if you find that they've got that energy there for you, it's on target. And then the second thing that happens with a statement that is really working is they start coming up with ideas for you. Have you thought of this? Have you gone to talk to this person? Have you even considered this direction? So you're going to get ideas and brainstorming with that person. And if those two things aren't happening, if they don't seem interested, if they go, oh yeah, that seems very nice, and change the subject, then you know you're not clear enough, or you're not energetic enough. See, in spring, the energy starts coming back, and you can't contain it anymore. It's exciting to be around somebody in spring because they're juiced about what they want to do. And so when you're talking to people, they get that. And I can tell you so many stories, and there are lots of stories in the book around people who've gone out into spring and when they were ready and they start interviewing or networking, and the thing just sort of falls in their lap. Well, no, really, they did all the hard work. And in spring, when those two things are aligned, boy, there's a lot of power in that. And then you commit to whatever form it's going to take. So think of the vision as a description of who you are and what you love and what you want to make an impact on. And then the spring is trying to find the form that it's going to take. And the form, you commit to a form, you commit to an organization, you commit to a job, and then you're back in summer and back in career management, right? And you need to continually be reevaluating that decision and that vision. And is it growing? Is it different? Is it changing as you're getting experience? Has it shifted any? Are there different needs that you might have? And maybe there's a different way that you need to express that. So those people who are in spring, does that describe anything a little bit about where you're at and what you need? How else would you describe it? Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. It's hard. Yeah. I mean, there's challenging places all around the cycle. I mean, it isn't like, oh, if I just get to summer, everything will be okay. There's challenges in summer too. And so I want you to sort of shift in seeing things as a cyclical process, that it isn't about arriving anywhere. It isn't about getting anywhere, but it's about really acknowledging that each step along the way you're learning something about yourself, and you're learning about how to create that in the world. And so there are a couple of rules of thumb of working with the cycles that I want to sort of remind or share with you. So even if you forget everything else we said tonight, I want you to remember these two things, because as you're going through this process, energy is always available for the immediate next step. Always. Energy is not something that we can create. It is or it isn't, right, in us. And so we have to check in with ourselves and say, well, what do I have energy for? What do I need right now? And to be honest with ourselves. Nothing is good or bad. I mean, it's not like if you're in winter and, you know, that stepping back process and you say, I don't have a lot of energy, and what would be really nice right now, what I have energy for, is a nap. But then your head says, oh, I can't take a nap because I have to be out there figuring this thing out, right? And we beat ourselves up. Well, you know, until you get that nap, it ain't gonna work. So go take the nap and you'll be better off for it, because you'll be clearer and you'll be able to get your next needs met. So you always check in with yourself. Always ask yourself, what do I have energy for at this moment? What do I need to do right now? Not from a head point of view, but from a heart point of view, from an experiential point of view. It's like, what's going to be the best thing for me right now? Not what I should do. Not the shoulds. These are not shoulds. These are, I need, I want. And if it ever feels overwhelming, scary, anxious, or confusing, it means you're trying to skip something. Always. That's all it means. It's a clue in the process. And so you can't skip anything. So you feel overwhelmed or confused or scared or anxious, use that and go, oh, okay, I'm trying to be further along than I really am. Let me back up into, number one, what do I have energy for right now? And how can I take that next immediate step? Because that will unfold into the whole process. You know, this is a naturally unfolding process. That's why we love using the seasons, because it's not something that you can force. It's not something that you can make happen. It's something that has to unfold in a way that is more natural. And you got to just be where you are and be okay with where you are. Because there's a lot of wisdom that you have inside of yourself that you need to connect with, and that will help you take that next immediate step. So I'd like to leave you with, Carl Jung is one of my favorite theorists. And I was able to see, you know, I don't know if you have any psych majors in the room. I'm a little bit of a psych geek, sorry. And Carl Jung was a theorist back in the 30s, and he kept a journal, a red book, this big red book of his, and painted his dreams. And this was one of the images. I was able to see it. I was speaking in Italy this summer, and it was at an art exhibit in Venice, and I was able to get there, and I was able to see this thing in person. It was just amazing to be able to see his red book. Anyway, sorry about that. That was an aside. But he said, it all depends on how we look at things, and not how things are in themselves. The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. So questions, we have a couple minutes for questions, comments, anything that, before we end with the next two, I have just a couple more slides, but I just wanted to make sure that you're leaving here with a different perspective on the world of work, a different perspective on how to go through transitions, and a little bit of an understanding that the choices are yours, and that maybe you're a little bit inspired now to really follow your passions. Yes, I don't know. It's kind of fun. Actually, it goes through all of this in a lot more detail. And it has worksheets in it, so that each season, it actually asks you to step back and really learn what you need to learn from the experiences you're going through. So the people so far who have bought it and have used it have, like, it's falling apart on them, because they've been going back to it and rereading it and really getting it. Because, you know, in an hour and a half, I can I can reach your cognitive abilities to understand this, but to really integrate it into a way of thinking about it, using it every day, having this as a perspective on how you see life, it takes longer than that. So being with the book, or even we have a workshop at Centerpoint called Navigating Change, which is this, and spending an all-day Saturday with it or a couple of evenings with it can be a helpful tool. Yeah, that's why. And it's fun. It's fun. It was a lifelong dream of mine to be able to share this with more people, and that's why I wrote the book. And it's a dream come true. It's very exciting. It's a very easy book to read. When I was speaking in Italy, there were people from all over the world there. And this one guy from Russia said to me, you know, I started reading the book already, and I'm going to give it to my girlfriend. She doesn't speak great English, but this is simple enough that she could get it. I'm like, great. Yeah, it's written for a very general population, very easy to read. There's graphics and quotes throughout. Yes, Karen.
I want to say that too, because I know you have a hard time talking.
I do.
Like marketing and stuff. After I read it, I started telling everybody I know about it, and everybody I know. It is a great.
Thank you, Karen. More questions? Yes?
I have a friend that's undergoing life changes all at once.
Mm-hmm.
For example, divorce, empty nester,
Yeah.
recently physical disability and autism.
Oh, wow.
Is there any advice you give to somebody undergoing multiple major life changes?
Yeah, we have a lot of folks come through Centerpoint who are going through many changes in their lives. And I think the big message is this is normal. This is normal. That don't try to change it, try to understand it, try to learn from it, try to grow from it, and get the support that you need, because it's not easy. And there's not a lot of support in our culture to go through those kind of changes. People want, it's like when somebody dies, you know, and you're going through a grieving process, and you know somebody really important to you, a family member, something dies, and you know 2 months later people saying, so you know, get over it, you know, you got to get back into life. Well, no, it takes longer, and there are ways of balancing, you know, the internal with the external, and a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of the inner work that needs to be done. And so I have a quote in the book around. Somebody said, I have my summer friends and I have my winter friends. They didn't know the cycle, but they said this. And when I'm in winter, I don't go to my summer friends because they don't really get it. Yeah. Yes? Yeah. The Time Between Dreams, How to Navigate Uncertainty in Life and Work. How to be honest with yourself in each season. Wow. I think it's the same answer about being honest with yourself. It's really, for me, it has to always come back to how am I feeling? You know, that if I'm staying in my head, then I typically am not being honest with myself, because that's where all the shoulds are coming from and what I think I should be doing. And if I really sit, and there's a whole chapter in the book about the Centerpoint. I didn't have time to go through every single step in this process with you guys, but the Centerpoint is that place where we can stop and listen in our lives. And we all have those things in big and little ways that give us the opportunity to stop and listen. And for some, it's you know, working in the garden. For me, sometimes it's just playing with my cats. For some people, it's meditation or prayer. It's you know, just that space. Sometimes people get it in the shower, you know, it's just whatever. And sometimes it, you know, happens in bigger ways when we need to take some time. But it's just that place where we can sort of get away from going around the cycle and stop and hear that small, still voice within, because there's the wisdom. It always knows. It always knows. And my head is always the one that's trying to convince it otherwise. So if I can really listen. I mean, I just had this experience. I just lost a cat, which was a very, you know, I'm a cat person. We had 6 of them at one time, and Minnie was sickly from the moment we fostered her, and now she just died. And I wasn't able to even be there because I was visiting my elderly parents in Virginia while it all happened. So I was on the phone as she was dying, and it was really awful. And then dealing with my parents and coming back, and I had no energy. I was exhausted because I do all the cooking and cleaning and everything for my dad because my mom's got Alzheimer's, and it's hard stuff. And so when I got back, it was New Year's Eve, and for 5 days I didn't get out of my sweats because that's what I needed. And then I could tell the energy started shifting because I was just able to grieve. I was able to grieve the cat. I was able to grieve my parents. I was able to grieve just not being able to be there. I was able to be with that. And then it shifted, you know. And it's not that the grief is gone, but it's different now. And just by being with, and so often we try to fight where we are. And if we can just accept it and learn from it. I know it's a longer, yes? Well, I'm going to ask you, or ask the group for that, because it is very, I mean, we don't talk about it at Centerpoint as a faith-based kind of thing because not everybody believes in things, or they believe in different things. And we don't want to, you know, put any judgment or alienate anybody. But for you, and for a lot of people, when they see this, it does, they do respond from a faith place. I mean, when you look at the life of Jesus and the going off into the wilderness for 40 days, you know, the desert for 40 days, right? That's winter. And when we have the different celebrations over the course of time, I mean, just even Christmas and Easter, and you think about those in terms of the cyclical approach, it just sort of makes a lot of sense. It all just sort of fits. I don't know if anybody else has any opinions about that. That was a very brief overview kind of response, I'm sorry. But yeah, it does fit. And what's really wonderful at Centerpoint is that we can invite anyone from any background into the environment, and they will feel comfortable, you know. And and we've shared the cycle with people from all over the world, and it seems like it's not a cultural, you know, a U.S. cultural kind of thing. For some, we just sort of gave out the sheet of paper that we have, not the career process, but we have one that's a little bit more in depth, and said, tell us what this means to you. And they were able to describe it, and it didn't matter where they came from. It's sort of a human experience of going through change and transition in our lives, and that uncertainty, because life is uncertain. I mean, we can't control it, right? So we have to be able to deal with that in order to function, and we each put up our sort of structures of how we live our lives and what makes meaning out of these experiences that we've had. And for some it's the faith approach, and for others it's other things. So we all have to do it, or otherwise, you know, you just sort of go, what's the point, right? Yeah, and meaning is important. Yeah.
I am totally on point with you as far as, like, you always have choices and you are kind of in control. But I was wondering, like, being in the spring stage and looking into summer, and something that I get frustrated with is, like, I want summer so bad that, well, I want to go from spring to, like, the peak of summer. Like, I don't want to go through this, like,
right.
figuring out the right spot. I just
Yep.
want to, like, I want to know what spot I want to be in, and I
Yep.
want to, like, I don't want to work my way up to that position. I just want to be at that position. So I was just wondering, would you say that it's fair to assume that your choices do limit in that season when you're going from that, or do you think it's always we have a lot of choices?
Well, I think we always have choices about how we react to things too. I mean, there's my dad's a civil engineer. You know, he's a very left brain kind of person, but he taught me something really early on, and he basically said, you know, if your expectations don't equal the reality, then you either have to, because if they do equal each other, then you'll be happy, you'll be satisfied with what you're doing. If they don't, then you either have to change your expectations or change the reality. And so the question is, can you change that reality? I don't know. Maybe there's a way to get to that place before it's worth asking the question. But more than likely, you'd have to change your expectations. So something has to shift, and you make the choice about what needs to shift. That makes sense? Well, we've run out of time, and so I just want to put up a couple things. One is to connect with Centerpoint and me. Online, my email, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. Oh, so Centerpoint just got on LinkedIn. We don't have very many followers there yet, so go. And I also, the radio program that I have, it's called chatwithwomen.com, Design a Life You Love with Carol Vecchio. And you can listen live. It's on 1150 KKNW, or it's podcast. So that's there.